The Chicago Regional Council of Carpenters has been a vanguard for sustainability in the construction industry. Their knowledge in formwork on the job extends to the classroom, where apprentices learn formwork standards and techniques. Victor Cerrone is an instructor for the apprentice and training program.
First system that we're working on is a John clamp system. A John clamp consists of 3/4 inch plywood, and you have your ties. Depending on the thickness of the wall, you'll come in and throw in your ties. Once you throw in your ties and make sure you nail this to the bottom plate, you come around to this side and you install your John clamps. Your John clamps they do a couple things. The John clamps are going to take the 2x4 or receive the 2x4, and the 2x4 is going to keep the wall intact, and also is going to keep the wall nice and straight.
Okay.
All right, on this side right here, you can see that we already got the 2x4s in place. We have the strong backs in place. The strong backs are going to have a brace, so that way we can plumb this thing up, so make it nice and plumb.
In addition to John clamps, Simon's forms are also a standard formwork solution in foundations today.
These are our 8-foot Simon's forms. You can use this for residential, light commercial, or even heavy commercial concrete, depending on the duty rating on the form. You can go as high as 20 feet. All you got to do is stack them, a couple 8-footers on top, and then maybe an 8-footer on top of that.
Okay.
Just make sure we reinforce them together. A little different than the plywood, it does consist of panels and clamps and ties, but they are a little different. Here we have our wedge bolt system that clamps the two forms together, and the vertical keeps this form from coming loose on you, and then you have the tie that keeps the dimension on the concrete wall.
Now, does this lend itself to doing something other than right corners and things like that, as far as other shapes?
Yeah, we got here a 90-degree corner, and we got a couple offsets, but if we walk over to this side of the foundation, we have a radius wall. Depending on the radius of the wall, you can use different size forms. We happen to use 10-inch on the outside. This inside radius is going to be a smaller radius, so we got to go with a smaller form.
Sure.
If you got, a radius that might be maybe like a 20-foot or a 40-foot radius, you can go with 2-foot panels, depending how neat you want that radius to look.
So this lends itself to do other shapes and sizes as well.
Yeah, we are kind of limited though compared to plywood, because those odd angles, and now we do have hinge corners.
Sure.
We can make any angle that we want. At the same time, they're not as versatile as a piece of plywood, because you can put a piece of plywood or anything that you want, any dimension, any angle. This is where you fill in the concrete. This is where you pour the concrete. And of course, you got to establish the top of the concrete, the elevation.
Okay. Now, how would they go about that? Is that marked on here, or how do you maintain knowing what level you need to pour the wall to?
Well, we gotta do some numbers with the benchmark.
Sure. Okay.
Whether it's with a total station, a transfer, or a laser, we just got to shoot the elevation according to the benchmark. The benchmark is going to tell us the height of this wall compared to anything on a work site.
Okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean you come in here and you pour the concrete to the top of the form. It might be set somewhere down to a different level from there.
Yes, most of the time your top of the foundation is going to be somewhere inside of the foundation, because it would be real difficult to make this foundation completely level all the way around. Okay. It's almost impossible.
Finally, part of training is dedicated to an alternative formwork, the insulated concrete form, and the benefits to its application.
IFCFs happens to be the forming system that you would pick if you want to go into a green building.
Wow.
Because what it is just a solid concrete wall.
Sure.
You can start in the basement, go up to the first floor, or even the second floor. They've done hotels up to 7 to 9 stories with these kind of ICFs.
So it's not necessarily just a foundation. You could kind of continue this through for the whole structure.
Oh, you definitely can. The nice thing about this too is that if you're inside of the basement, if you guys want to walk in here,
sure,
and then I'll show you, inside of a room, inside of a basement, first floor, you can walk in here and throw on your drywall right away.
Okay.
And the reason you throw in your drywall is because if you look, you have your tie that you can screw right into that. So you don't need to frame anything. No wood, no metal, you can just screw it right to here, and you have a drywall.
So basically, this system eliminates a couple steps that normally would take place.
Right, no framing,
Sure.
no insulating,
Right.
because this is the insulation. On the outside walls, you don't need to insulate.
So these kind of, they just stack in place, and I assume you try to offset your joints and things like that?
Yeah, the whole trick to this whole system is to keep your ties aligned. If
Okay.
you keep your ties aligned, the seams will stagger by themselves.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would just come apart when you pour the concrete.
Sure.
A little bit more bracing for this type of system, and when you pour, you got to pour in layers. The first couple, 3 feet, go all the way around this whole pour, come up again another 4 feet, and then top off to the very top, depending on the height.